blessed afternoon, classmates. So welcome again to this recorded video. And for this video, I'll be presenting to you chapter 3, which is the intellectual revolution. So last time, we already discussed what is all about the Philippine inventions, the Filipino inventors, the Filipino scientists, and so on. Okay, so this time, we're going to leave again the Philippines, but we're going to look at the global great thinkers, or let's say scientists, philosophers, astronomers, that has something to do with the transformation of our society in line to this topic, which is what we call the intellectual revolution. So before we start with the proper discussion, let us start with a popular statement or quotation of a popular scientist, which is Albert Einstein. So he said or stated that science without religion is blind and religion without science is lame. So this is one of the reasons why he became very popular during the 19th century until the 21st century or early 21st century. So this is the reason also why people or our society started to rant or started to have questions on the concept of science in line in the connection of the concept of religion. So there is a debate, now an argument between the concept of science and then in connection to the concept of religion. Because we now know, my dear classmate, that there is a lot of questions in the concept of science. At the same time, there's also a lot of questions towards the concept of religion. But if we go back in the ancient time or during the early time, we observe that during the ancient civilizations, we already have seen the connection of science and then religion. Now, particularly during the Greek civilization going towards the Chinese civilization. For example, religion is already present during the ancient time, and church is also very powerful. They believe of what we call in the Greek civilization. They already believe on a theory, what we call the geocentric theory, or that is the stating that the earth is the center of the universe. Because it is said on the religion aspect or concept that the God created the earth. That is why we can say that there is already a connection of science and the religion during the ancient time. However, during the time that Albert Einstein stated this science without religion is blind and then religion without science is lame, it turned out to become or let's say there's a big impact towards our society. The good thing, now my dear classmate, during this present time, we know that we are already open, or we have an open point of view towards the concept of science and then towards the concept of religion. So it's a good thing that we are starting to know more about the connection of science and then religion during this modern time. Because of some explanation, because of some other evidences, again, there is always argument or debate between these two concepts, because there are some concept of science that cannot be explained by religion. At the same time, there are some concept of religion that cannot be explained by science. And there is something to do with what we're going to discuss this afternoon, because probably we're going to still discuss about science at the same time in line also to religion. And later on the other chapters of our subject, we're going to look more on the other concept of science and then other concept of religion towards this subject. So for now, we're going to leave first the statement of Albert Einstein and going to proceed now on the other great thinkers that transform or something to do on the transformation of our society this present day. For this afternoon, I'm going to present to you 7 philosophers that have an impact on the transformation of our society this present day. So we have Nicholas Copernicus. We're going to talk about the Copernican revolution. We also have Johann Kepler, Isaac Newton. So we have what we call the Newtonian revolution. We also have Charles Darwin. We're going to talk about the Darwinian revolution. We have Sigmund Freud, or the Freudian revolution. And Albert Einstein and Anton Lavoisier. Well, if you are wondering, sir, parang tatlo lang actually yung na-mention doon sa ating module. Well, that is the highlighted, the highlighted 3 great thinkers that have an impact towards our society. However, I'm going to present some of the other philosophers because they have a connection or impact also on the work of those other highlighted philosophers. Like for example, si Copernicus, the work of Nicholas Copernicus, or the theory of Nicholas Copernicus, is something to do also with the theory of Johann Kepler. And then vice versa. no? Johannes Kepler is something to do also with the work of Nicholas Copernicus. Okay, and we have Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton have something to be connected with Albert Einstein. Okay, and Albert Einstein also contributed a lot in line to the field of science and technology, even in the other field of sciences. Okay, Antoine Lavoisier is also one of the popular chemists during the early time, and he is also one of the reasons who come up with the basis of the modern thing that we are actually studying in the field of chemistry. So that will be mentioned to you later on. And Charles Darwin is more on the biology concept, so more on independent revolution, no, yung kanyang time or during the time of Charles Darwin. So we're going to talk about theories and other contributions of Charles Darwin. And we also have Sigmund Freud. When I talk about the Freudian revolution, well, that is more on the psychology and other theories that was being presented by Sigmund Freud. Okay, so I will be presenting to you 7 philosophers or 7 great thinkers yan in general. So for this afternoon, probably we're going to discuss or talk about the theories and scientific ideas presented by those different great thinkers during the earlier centuries. Namely, we have Nicholas Copernicus, that is during the 15th to 16th century. We also have Isaac Newton, that is during the 17th century. Johannes Kepler, Charles Darwin, and Antoine Lavoisier during the 18th to 19th century. And we also have Sigmund Freud and Albert Einstein during the 19th to 20th century until the early 21st century. And they are actually, there are 7 great thinkers. So for me to remember those 7 great thinkers, I came up with my own mnemonic. So you can use also this one, or you can come up with your own mnemonic. So for me, I used Copernicus, jump to new dawn of loving and thinking on Einstein's theory. So that is how I actually remember those 7 philosophers, or 7 great thinkers, I mean. So yung letter T, thinking, because Sigmund Freud is more on psychology. So yun yung ginamit ko for him, to remember yung kanyang theories as well as to remember Sigmund Freud. Okay, so those are the 7 great thinkers that we're going to talk this afternoon. So aside from the 7 great thinkers, let us first start with the term paradigm shift. No? Because the paradigm shift is basically connected to what we call yung intellectual revolution. So it's something to do also on the works or in the contribution of those great thinkers. So the paradigm shift was proposed by Thomas Kuhn. It is an American physicist that lived or born on 1922 and then died during the 1996. Okay, so Thomas Kuhn proposed what is paradigm shift, and he defined paradigm shift as the change of one way of thinking to another. So probably, my dear classmate, if we go back on the basic knowledge of what we call this one, when we talk about science or defining science, now from the word scientia, that is basically knowledge, and we mentioned before that science in science and then constant change is probably connected, or the only constant to science is also change. Now that was mentioned on the early discussion or during the first chapter, or the overview or introduction of our subject. So probably on the paradigm shift, there is also what we call a change of one way of thinking to another. Probably we are pertaining to the different theories, to the different scientific ideas, to the different scientific concept that was being presented during the early time until this present time. Or maybe in the future, there will be changes, or there will be a way of us to think on another way, or to have a point of view or other point of view towards this kind of theory. And that is also one of the reasons why there are some theories, or there are some scientific concept or ideas that was accepted before that is not already accepted during this time, or that is because of some of lack of evidence or lack of proof, no? And that is in line also to what we call the paradigm shift. So when we talk about paradigm shift, it is way similar to what we call a revolution. Now, because there's a change. Now, what else? There is a transformation. There is a change, probably. No, and also a sort of metamorphosis. The word metamorphosis comes from geology. Now, that is more on the rock formation. So from igneous rock going to what we call metamorphic rock, from sedimentary rock going to a metamorphic rock. So metamorphosis is actually a change of form of rock. So yung term na metamorphosis they are pertaining to the change. No? So change of form, same as true with the knowledge, there is what we call a change, no, of how we think about this knowledge, how we think or how to view, no, this kind of theory that was being presented before, and also how it changes, no, over time because of some evidences or explanations or another modification that particular theory or scientific concept that we have during this present time. Okay, so there is a change of one way of thinking to another. Another thing that we need to remember when we talk about paradigm shift, it is actually worldview. Now, meaning we are not pertaining only into a specific theory, but we are pertaining to all, no, lahat ng theories, lahat ng scientific ideas, scientific concept that was being presented before until during this present time. Because there is a change, no? Merong pagbabago ang thinking natin towards those different theories. Depending already on the explanation or the proof or evidence of some scientists or of some great thinkers or maybe another scientist or philosopher that will exist during this present century, or this present time. And maybe during the future, there is another person or another scientist that we're going to modify or explain that this is actually about the theory, and probably there will be another change of our thinking towards that theory. And that is what we call yung paradigm shift. So normally the paradigm shift is also being created because of some anomalies, no? So anomalies or lack of explanation or lack of evidence, no, that I have mentioned to you earlier, of those different theories or scientific ideas or scientific concept. So the paradigm shift, I have said, now it is connected to what we call the intellectual revolution. Why? My dear classmate, the intellectual revolution is defined as the period in history marked by the contributions of many great thinkers which their works created yung tinatawag natin na paradigm shift. Because they are the one who are proposed the different theories. They are the ones who has created these scientific ideas. Because of this study, their studies, etc., well, probably there are changes or there is what we call paradigm, or there will be a created paradigm shift because there are so many philosophers that is existing, particularly in a different centuries, that is modifying or improving or enhancing or coming up with another theory to explain that this kind of theory is no longer accepted, but we have this kind, a new type of theory and other things, na, that will in line to what we call yung paradigm shift. So probably it was because also on the contribution and then the works and other scientific ideas, theories that was being presented by the great thinkers. And when we talk about intellectual revolution, we also talk about how our society was transformed by the science and technology through the help of the great thinkers. So that is what we call intellectual revolution. That's why it's really important to discuss to you or present to you this kind of topic, because we're going to appreciate as well as to understand how come that we come up with this kind of society nowadays. That is because on some of the consideration or some of the contribution or impact of the great thinkers during the early century. So that is what we call an intellectual revolution. Take note, my dear classmate, pag sinabi nating paradigm shift, there is a change. Pag sinabi nating intellectual revolution, there is what we call transformation of the society. So please do take note on those terms. So let's start with Copernican revolution or the time of Nicholas Copernicus. But before Nicholas Copernicus, let's try to look at it earlier, during the earlier time. So Aristotle during the ancient time is the very, very first person to postulate, or let's say to propose or come up with the concept of the geocentric theory, who said that the earth is actually the center of the universe. So he is the first one. And based on sa knowledge to come up with this kind of geocentric theory by Aristotle was because he also believed on religion and then church. And then the church knows that God created the earth. That's why he also come up with this geocentric theory. So everything is actually moving around the earth. So geocentric theory was been created because of Aristotle. So later on, after some times, another philosopher or astronomer existed, which is in the name of Ptolemy, come up or improve and then enhance the geocentric theory of Aristotle and come up also with his own version or come up with his own model of what we call the geocentric theory, and that was known as the Ptolemaic model of the geocentric theory. So in that alone, my dear classmate, from Aristotle going to Ptolemy, there is already what we call a paradigm shift. So mayroon ng changes kasi nagkaroon ng improvement, nagkaroon ng enhancement of the geocentric theory. And after sometimes, another person, another philosopher, or let's say astronomer, studied the planets, etc., and come up with a postulation, or let's say what call this one, the very first person to postulate or to come up with the concept that the sun is actually the center of the universe and it's not actually the earth. However, take note, my dear classmate, during the early time, again, the church and religion is very powerful. They only believe on the geocentric theory because of lack of evidence of Aristarchus of Samos on the explanation of the sun is the center of the universe. They rejected this idea or this theory of Aristarchus of Samos. So earlier si Aristarchus of Samos before Nicholas Copernicus. So Nicholas Copernicus during the Renaissance period, or that is between 15th to 16th century, he revived the concept and come up with his own study and created a new theory, which is what we call yung heliocentric theory, or telling us that the sun is actually the center of the universe. So you can see the transition or the change from the geocentric theory going towards heliocentric theory. But wait, there's more, my dear classmate. We know also that during the Renaissance period, still the religion is very powerful, or the church is very powerful, and they don't believe on the other theories but except yung geocentric theory. So again, this time, the time of Nicholas Copernicus, that he wrote the book entitled On the Revolutions of Heavenly Spheres and explaining yung heliocentric theory was being rejected until the late 16th century. So that is the sad story of Nicholas Copernicus. So probably there is no particular change of the geocentric theory towards the heliocentric theory. Until then, after 2 centuries, after 2 centuries, another person or another philosopher, and say astronomer or great thinker, who proposed and revived the concept of what we call the heliocentric theory. This is in the name of Johann Kepler, to answer and then to prove that Nicholas Copernicus is actually right about the heliocentric theory. So he supported the heliocentric theory and revived this theory, and also to answer the 2 problems that was being proposed by Nicholas Copernicus during the 15th to 16th century. So there are 2 problems in the heliocentric theory of Copernicus. Number 1, there is a perfect circular orbits of the planets, which is lack of explanation. Why did you say that there is a perfect circular orbit of the planet? And next one is the fixed positions of the stars. How did you say that the positions of the stars are actually stationary or fixed? Why is it that the stars are not moving? So that is again a lack of evidence or lack of explanation by Nicholas Copernicus. So probably Johann Kepler tried to answer and then supported this heliocentric theory by also coming up with a proof of an evidence to answer the problems of the heliocentric theory. So this time, he formulated or proposed the 3 laws of planetary motion in support with the heliocentric theory. Okay, so the first law stated that the orbits of the planets are actually elliptical and not perfect circular orbits. Okay, so that is the first answer, or let's say a support on the heliocentric theory of Nicholas Copernicus. And it was being proven during this time and towards the 20th century that astronomers and astronauts or other philosophers, astronomers, prove that it is true, that our orbit or the planet's orbits are actually elliptical, not actually perfect circle. Because my dear classmate, sometimes the planet Earth is very close from the sun, and sometimes the planet Earth is very far from the sun. Okay? And then the movement and also yung changing of position of those planets are definitely following an elliptical orbit. Okay? And that is because of Johann Kepler. Okay? Doon sa first law niya ng 3 laws of planetary motion. And take note, my dear classmate, Johann Kepler used already a more an advanced type of telescope during this time. Okay, so thank you for Galileo Galilei on inventing the telescope that was already used by the other philosophers or great thinkers during the preceding centuries, such as Johannes Kepler. Okay, going back on the three laws of planetary motion, aside from the orbits are elliptical, not perfect sa circle, the second law stated that the sun sweeps the earth with an equal area in equal time. In this second law, it's already been proving that there is a changing of positions of the planets. Okay? At the same time, it will also explain why there is no such fixed positions of the stars or fixed positions of the other planets. Because sometimes a planet might be very close to the sun, or maybe the planet is very far also from the sun. So nagbabago yung positions of the stars. Okay? Such as our planet, which is yung he said that in the second law, the sun was sweep the earth into an equal area into equal time. So pakita ko yung picture later on for you to understand better about the second law. But that is one of the support or proof that probably we need to believe about the heliocentric theory. And then the last one is only a computation. The computation lang yung third law. Squared revolution of a planet is actually equal to the mean distance cube of another planet. This is very good law in the three laws of planetary motion, because we can determine or we can evaluate, or let's say we can compare the squared revolution of our planet to the mean distance to other planets. Okay, so computation, but never mind giving you computation problems. Hindi naman ako magbibigay ng computation. So let us try to look again, no, yung second law. Balikan natin yung second law. This is the picture of a sample picture of what did Johannes Kepler explain about the second law. So in this second law alone, it is telling us already that the heliocentric theory is actually true, since the sun is sweeping the earth with an equal area and equal time. So probably it is not the earth which is the center, but even the earth is also revolving around the sun. Okay? And that is why they supported, and we believe already, or we accepted the heliocentric theory and rejected now what we call the geocentric theory. So it was been proven already that the earth is not the center, but instead the sun is actually the center of our universe, or probably our own solar system. Okay, so dito sa ating sample picture, you notice a blue mark, which is the area. Yan. So sometimes, now let's say, in this edge or the point or the starting point of the blue mark, that is the starting point of the planet Earth. So the planet Earth traveled until doon sa edge again of the blue mark of our illustration after 1 month. And he covered, or the planet Earth covered this area, and after some times he traveled again, or the planet Earth traveled again at this point, yan, and then within 1 month again he traveled until this point. So probably this area is equal to this area. Okay, that's why he said in the second law that the sun sweeps the earth with an equal area and equal time, and even in the other positions with the same time, or as well as with the same or equal area. Okay, so kung saan man, hanggang kung alin man dyan sa positions na yan, kahit na alin dyan sa part ng orbit, no, ng planet Earth, it will still have an equal area and equal time. Okay, and that was the second law of three laws of planetary motion by Johannes Kepler, and that is one of the support for the heliocentric theory. And this is only a sample computation for our third law. So sabi ko nga, no, my dear classmate, we can evaluate, or we can see the comparison, or we can say that there is an equal equality of what we call yung equal value of what we call the squared revolution of our planet, let's say our planet, and then equal to the mean distance of another planet, let's say for example Mercury. Okay, and maybe we can also use this one to compute, no, or to check out the distance from the sun, or let's say from planet Earth going towards Mercury. Okay, and that is because of this third law of Johannes Kepler. So never mind yung computation, at least you know that there are three laws of planetary motion that supported and explain also, or one of the proof why we need to believe the heliocentric theory. So in fact, it was been proven already, and probably in this 21st century or in this modern time, we already accepted the heliocentric theory. Okay, so let us check out yung different models from Aristotle. So from geocentric theory, going now towards what we call the heliocentric theory of Johannes Kepler. Okay, so this is the Aristotle model of the geocentric theory. So probably the Earth is the center of the universe, and then the moon is revolving around the Earth, and as well as the other planets, and even the sun, is probably revolving because the Earth is still the center of the universe. And this is the Ptolemaic model of the geocentric theory. Again, the Earth is the center of the universe, and this time Ptolemy come up with other version of the model. Probably he come up with two orbits, so yung smaller orbit is what we call the epicycle. Yan, epicycle yung ating term sa smaller orbit that he introduced in that model, and the larger orbit that was introduced by Ptolemy is called as different. Yan, so different yung tawag natin dyan. So in this model, now if you notice, the planet is revolving in the smaller orbit. At the same time, it is also revolving in a bigger orbit. So it's a little bit complicated yung model ni Ptolemy. But however, this was been accepted also by the society during the time of Ptolemy. So that is the improvement or the enhancement of the model of the geocentric theory of Aristotle. So from Aristotle, going to Ptolemy, and then going back now to Nicholas Copernicus. Okay, so Nicholas Copernicus come up with his own version or new version of the heliocentric theory, which is the sun is the center of the universe. Yan, so we have the sun, the Mercury, the Venus, the Earth, and it's really impressive to think about it that the moon is already revolving, or he discovered that the moon is already revolving around our planet Earth. Okay, so that is our moon Luna. And we have the Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn. So hanggang Saturn lang, probably yung discovery during this early time. So we have said that one of the there are two problems of the heliocentric theory. Yan, yung perfect circular orbit, and as well as the fixed positions of the stars. And at present, during the time of Johannes Kepler, he already come up with this kind of illustration or a model for our heliocentric theory. So the sun is the center, our orbits is elliptical, and here comes now the other planets. So we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and also Saturn. So during the 19th century or 18th to 19th century, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets. And then for the preceding centuries, they already discovered Neptune, and then Uranus, and then afterwards they also discovered Pluto. However, the Pluto was been disregarded as a major planet during 2010 or 2012 because of some of the features of Pluto is actually a feature of a dwarf planet. So this time, at present, we only have 8 major planets, and the Pluto is considered to be a dwarf planet. And we know that Pluto is also following a different path for his own orbit compared to the other 8 major planets. So that is how they change on how we think about the geocentric theory of our society, going now on believing what we call the heliocentric theory. Okay, so it takes actually a lot of century or long time before we believe or we come up with the heliocentric or supported now yung heliocentric theory. Okay, so that is how we change from geo going to heliocentric theory. So let us leave yung astronomy. Let us go now to other concept aside from Nicholas Copernicus, Johannes Kepler, Aristotle, Ptolemy. Let us talk about on the Newtonian revolution. So during the 17th century, going back now because Johannes Kepler is during the 18th century. So going back on 1 century, Isaac Newton is also popular during this time because he is the person who stated that our universe is like a puzzle or a riddle. So probably he believed that God is present everywhere. Now take note, Isaac Newton is also a member of what we call a group of occult during the 17th century. So there is an irony why he stated that God is present everywhere, or why is it that he believed on God at the same time he is a member of an occult group during this time. However, the important thing that you need to take note about Isaac Newton is that he said that God created our universe, God created our planets, or God created this world because he also give us a puzzle, and he also give us a riddle for us humans to solve this kind of puzzle or riddle. Okay? At the same time, my dear classmate, another reason why he come up with this concept, because he discovered the concept or the presence of what we call yung gravitational force. Because if you still remember your high school or your history of science, we know that Isaac Newton is the person who was being distracted with falling fruit on its head, probably when he was studying under that particular tree. It was not actually mentioned or specified as an apple, but a type of fruit that fall down on its head, and that's the time that he discovered that there is what we call a gravitational force. Okay, and he used also this kind of study or the gravitational force to come up with the different concepts on science and physics, etc. And he also proposed, now as we all know, he proposed yung concept of calculus, which he used the calculus as well as yung gravitational force to come up with his 3 laws of motion. Okay, and that is still we are studying or learning about these 3 laws of motion in the physics or in science. Okay, even during your grade 10, or I think during your high school as a lower year, or maybe during your senior high. Even during this tertiary level, if you have physics subject, probably you're going to talk about the 3 laws of motion by Isaac Newton, and also when you talk about the gravitational force. Okay, and probably one of the great impact of the gravitational force or the discovery of Isaac Newton of the gravity is we are already believing that there is a gravitational force existing within our planet Earth. That is because of Isaac Newton. And we also base some of the activity or let's say yung creation ng different infrastructure during this present time because of the presence of what we call yung gravitational force. Okay, like buildings, building of houses, and the use what we call one because of the 3 laws of motion, how is the movement of a particular object, etc. Okay, so Isaac Newton have also a very big influence towards our society, or how it transformed our society today. Okay, another thing that we need to talk about Isaac Newton, it is connected. I have said it is connected to Albert Einstein. So Albert Einstein tried to explain and modify the study of Isaac Newton during the 19th century to until the early 21st century. So he also come up with his own study to explain about the gravitational force. That's why he come up, or Albert Einstein come up with what we call yung theory of relativity, or yung general theory of relativity. In other study also that will modify yung study ni Isaac Newton. So that is the thing about Albert Einstein. Well, I'm going to mention to you later on the other works and other contribution of Albert Einstein. However, when we talk about Isaac Newton, that is his contribution on how we transform our society during this modern time. Okay, so aside from the physics world, or in the physics world, and let's say in the gravitational force concept, let us proceed on the biology concept. So after 1 century, during the 18th to 19th century, here comes Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin is well known with the theory of evolution, but before he proposed that theory, he actually traveled around the globe or around the world in 5 years, and that is what we call the Beagle of Voyage world of the travel of Charles Darwin. And after he traveled around the world for 5 years, he observed, during that 5 years, he observed what is happening on the natural world, or what is happening in our world, and he come up with a book entitled On the Origin of Species, explaining now about the theory of evolution. Well, the theory of evolution is actually based on the concept of what we call the natural selection. So he stated that the species, every species are actually evolving through what we call the concept of the natural selection, or we can say that nature selection. So probably a species will evolve if he or she or that organism or that species will adapt on our nature, or it will adapt on the current situation of our nature or our environment. Okay, if that species will not adapt or will not be selected by nature, probably that species will not evolve. Okay, one of the practical or a popular example before that was mentioned of some of our teachers, if you still remember, in high school, na pag evolution na ang pag-uusapan natin or about Charles Darwin, in the concept of natural selection, yung giraffe, no? So they explained that giraffe is actually not having a very long neck but instead a short neck, no? But because of what we call the theory of evolution, in the concept of natural selection, probably as the source of food of the giraffe is growing, the giraffe is also adapting. So as time goes by, since it is in adapting and then evolving, that's the reason why the neck of the giraffe is turned out to become a very, very long neck because of that adaptation or because of its evolution. Okay? And that is based on the concept of the theory of evolution or the concept also of the natural selection of Charles Darwin. Okay? Another thing that you need to take note about the theory of evolution, it is somewhat like similar to what we call yung survival of the fittest. Okay? So if you will not survive, you cannot evolve. But if you survive, you will probably evolve. Okay? So that is the explanation of the theory of evolution. Another concept, no, or another idea that was open during this theory of evolution of Charles Darwin is that since we are also considered to be a species in this planet, it was stated or it was already mentioned that humans also evolved, no, during this time. So probably we have been selected by nature, we survived, that's why we also evolved. But take note, my dear classmate, don't be confused. It is not the time that we do have a debate that he said that humans came from apes or came from chimpanzee. No, it is only the time that he come up with another book explaining the descent of man or the descendant of man. And this is the time or the start or the beginning of downfall or downfall of Charles Darwin. Why? Because he added on the family tree of humans yung ating ancestor, which is actually a monkey or a chimpanzee. And this is also the reason why we come up with the concept or explaining on the descent of man yung existence ng what we call Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, etc. And even the missing link towards the evolution of human. So that's the time that people rant. The people being distracted. Our society was being shocked. How did you say that humans are being was evolved or came from monkeys or chimpanzee? That is based on the book written by Charles Darwin, which is The Descent of Man. So that is the time that there was an argument, there was a debate on that book of Charles Darwin, or the concept or the idea that was presented by Charles Darwin. So don't be confused, no? The theory of evolution is more probably on general, no? In general sa lahat ng species, and then it talks about natural selection and survival of the fittest. So only the time that he proposed yung The Descent of Man, or write the book entitled The Descent of Man or Descendant of Man. But until now, no, they cannot find archaeologists or some archaeologists that believe on Charles Darwin, they cannot find the missing link, no, towards the evolution of human. While in fact, my dear classmate, on the other hand, the natural selection or the theory of evolution was actually been proven during this 21st century because of some of archaeological evidences or archaeological proof. However, take note, my dear classmate, our world or most of the humans or the countries are already believing to what we call the divine theory or what we call yung creation theory. So we have different religions, no? Christian, Muslim, etc. So we believe on divine theory or the creation theory. Okay? So we believe on supernatural being or we believe on God. That's why we cannot accept that there is what we call a theory of evolution. So most still of humans did not believe on the theory of evolution of Charles Darwin. Although there is already an evidence or an archaeological proof that the natural selection or the theory of evolution of Charles Darwin is basically true. Okay, so yun nga lang, balik ulit tayo on what we are believing because of the divine theory or the creation theory. Okay, except doon sa the descent of man, no, sino ba naman magsasabing or will be accepting that we came from monkeys or we came from apes. Okay, so there's a big question, and that is the start of the downfall of Charles Darwin. Okay, and then aside from this, the descent of man, there is what we call unforgotten theory. Yan, there is an unforgotten theory that was written by Charles Darwin. However, it is called as unforgotten theory because this was never been finished because he is already died. Okay, so he already died before finishing the evolution of beauty. So the evolution of beauty, according to the concept of Charles Darwin, he only stated that every species have a beauty of finding their mates or finding their partners. Okay, so it's not pertaining to the appearance, no, the beauty of a person or a beauty of an organism or species, but on how we find mates or we find our partners. Like for example, a bird, no, a bird can dance. A bird can can bring food to the female bird. Okay, so there is a beauty, no, on how to find their mates, and even the other organisms or other species. And that is the evolution of beauty, which is actually a very impressive type of theory of Charles Darwin. However, it was not been finished because he already died. One good thing during the 21st century or 20th century, another person who continued the concept of the evolution of beauty in the name of Richard Brome. So this time, a specific species. He studied the birds for 14 years and he used the concept of evolution of beauty. So he said that there is an evolution of beauty of birds. Okay, so meaning there are different ways on how they find their mates or how they find their partners. For example, dancing, singing, bringing food, fighting, etc. Okay, so that is the beauty on how birds find their mates or find their partners. Okay, so that is how it changes. Now, how is the paradigm shift from the theory of evolution going down to the evolution of beauty of Charles Darwin? Well, there is a big impact, no, or influence of the theory of evolution, as well as, no, mas lalo na yung the descent of man na yan, and some archaeologists are still proving that the descent of man will be true if they find the missing link or a proof of evidence of the missing link. Okay, so until now, wala pa naman. Okay, so that is all about Charles Darwin or the Darwinian Revolution. Okay, so that is the picture only of the cover page of the book, okay, on the origin of species, and this is also the cover page of the book of the descent of man. Okay, so that is all about Charles Darwin. Alright, so before I proceed on the last three great thinkers, do you have any questions or clarifications so far, my dear classmates? Yan, i-check ko lang kung nasa GMIT conference din kayo. If you do have what you call if you don't have a questions or clarifications, kindly click ulit yung ating hand raise or raise hand dyan sa ating GMIT conference. Yan, unless kung meron kayong question, you may open your microphone and then ask me the question. Yan, meron tayong clarifications? Wala? Okay, so at least you click yung ating hand raise. Yan, to check if you are also active dyan sa ating GMIT conference. Thank you, classmates. Let us proceed on the last three three great thinkers. So we have Anton Lavoisier, Sigmund Freud, and we also have Albert Einstein during the 19th to 20th century. So in the field of chemistry, yan, let us go. Now in the field of chemistry, we do have what we call Anton Lavoisier. So Anton Lavoisier existed on 19th century going to 20th century. But before Anton Lavoisier, let us go back on the ancient time. So during the ancient time or during the early time, the society believed that there are four elements in our environment or in our planet. That is because of Empedocles, who introduced the concept of the four elements, which is the water, the earth, the fire, and then the wind. That is the four elements. However, this was been corrected and modified by Anton Lavoisier during the 19th century. He said that there are no actually four elements because water is not considered to be an element, but it is actually compound. That is the combination of hydrogen and oxygen gas, which we came up with what we call the formula H2O, or that is what we call the water. So Anton Lavoisier come up with another way to explain now the elements during this 19th century. Okay? And because of Anton Lavoisier, he is one of the reason why we have what we call the periodic table, because he is the very first one to name elements or to discover or to write or to come up with what we call yung naming of elements. Like for example, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, magnesium, etc. and other elements that was been discovered and named by Anton Lavoisier. Okay, so why we have periodic table? One of the reason because of Anton Lavoisier. Another thing that when you talk about Anton Lavoisier in the field of chemistry, before Anton Lavoisier, there is another chemist who proposed a theory which is what they call yung phlogiston theory. If you still remember your chemistry history, George Stahl is the chemist who proposed about the phlogiston theory. So he said or stated on his theory that if we burn a material or we burn an object, there will be a release substance which is what we call a phlogiston substance. So any materials that we burn or any materials that undergo what we call combustion, it will produce a substance which is what we call a phlogiston substance. However, during the time of Anton Lavoisier, he corrected again this theory. So probably he came up with his own theory, which is what we call oxidation theory. So he said that instead of phlogiston substance, there is no such phlogiston substance. But if we want to have what we call the process of burning and combustion, we need a reaction of oxygen gas, or we need the presence of oxygen gas. So meaning we don't have phlogiston substance. Now we don't have phlogiston substance. Probably because before we conduct burning or combustion, we need the reaction of oxygen. And at the same time, he also proposed yung law of conservation of mass. So if a material will going to is not yet burned, and then if you're going to compare the mass of this let's say the wood in original form, and then after it was burned, if you're going to collect the ashes and compare the mass, there is actually an equal mass of the two material in a different form. That explains or prove that the phlogiston substance is not actually existing. Because if there will be phlogiston substance, probably there will be an excess mass of the other form of the material. And that is how he changed the thinking of society from the phlogiston theory going now to the oxidation theory and the law of conservation of mass. So the oxidation theory was been proven through a simple experiment. So he used a candle. If you still remember this one, now he used a candle and he lighted up the candle and covered with a glass or a container. So probably the fire from the candle will turn it off or it will die. So probably if we don't have oxygen, if we don't have oxygen within the air, probably there is no burning or combustion, or we cannot conduct burning or combustion. And another thing that he observed in the experiment, as the fire will turn off or it will die, it will produce a smoke. And in that smoke, it was the formation or the result is actually a carbon dioxide. That's why he discovered also the carbon and also yung presence ng oxygen gas. Another thing that he observed in the experiment, probably what we call this one, in this experiment, he noticed also that as the smoke will react on the container, on that glass, it will form what we call a water vapor or a water, or yung moisture, and that's the time that he also discovered hydrogen. So doon na form yung hydrogen and oxygen gas, and even yung carbon, and as well as yung carbon dioxide, and then yung water. Kasi meron ng moisture or water vapor. So in conclusion, on that experiment, he already stated, or they concluded, that the only product of combustion and burning is actually carbon dioxide and water. So yun yung only result of the burning or combustion activity. So that is because of Anton Lavoisier, and that is what we call oxidation theory or oxygen theory, because of the presence of what they call the oxygen, so that we will have the burning or the combustion process, or to conduct yung itong burning or combustion. So that is in the field of chemistry. Now let us go to the other field. Now aside from chemistry, let us go on the field of psychology. So we have Sigmund Freud or Sigmund Freud. Anyways, as long as you have the same spelling, So Sigmund Freud or Sigmund Freud is well known in his theory about proposed what we call the psychoanalytic theory, or explaining what we call about the psychoanalysis. So in this theory of Sigmund Freud, we are going to study the mind and then the behavior of a person or an individual or a human to determine or to identify if this person or this human have an illness or health problem or a disease. Okay? Or maybe intellectual problem. Okay? So, or intellectual disorder. So that is all about the psychoanalytic theory or the psychoanalysis. Kaya nga psychoanalysis, no? We're going to analyze the thinking or the mind or say the behavior of that particular person. If there will be or how, or so that we will identify if he or she is having a problem or let's say a health problem, yan, a disease or illness, which is probably a very great help until this present time because psychologists are still using psychoanalysis and that was actually been proven. For example, practical example, my dear classmate, if we are having if we are very lazy, that is because we are having fever, okay? Or we are being moody because we have a headache. We cannot think properly because we do have what we call, let's say, because we are feeling we feel headache. Okay, so that is a good example when we talk about psychoanalysis or psychoanalytic theory. And also with those people that is being full or being crazy, probably they have a different behavior and they also have a different way of thinking, and that was being proved or being analyzed through what we call psychoanalysis. So if you have heard about psychotherapy, which is basing actually on the psychoanalytic theory of Sigmund Freud. So that is how he influenced or how it transformed yung ating thinking towards the theory of Sigmund Freud until this present time. Okay, aside from this psychoanalytic theory, we also have what we call the Iceberg Theory and the Ego Superego Theory. So when we talk about this Iceberg Theory of Sigmund Freud, we are pertaining on the three different parts of the iceberg. So we have their conscious, the preconscious, and then the unconscious. So yung meron tayong in the shallow part, we have the submerged and then the deep part of the iceberg. So the only point, one of the good point of the Freud's iceberg theory is that he only stated or saying that we need to use our unconscious to become conscious. Okay? So how is that? Sir, paano yun? It's very ironic and very complicated. Well, for example, if we have fears, if we feel scared, isn't it that we are also conscious? Okay, so we need to use our fear to become conscious. And that is basically normal. Now, if we are being scared, we feel also conscious. Okay? Or we are conscious. Another thing, if we are using our instinct, or let's say if we are having our own motive, or we're going to decide, or we're going to, let's say, think about our what we're going to do or what will be our motives, probably we are conscious because we are thinking as well. We are aware on what is really happening around us. So that is the point, or the one good point of the iceberg theory. And probably one of this type of theory was have a great impact also towards the study of psychology, at the same time towards our society. So other people or humans are also basing this one. When we talk about those instincts, when we talk about the memory, when we talk about preconscious, conscious, and so on. Okay, so that is when we talk about the Sigmund Freud's iceberg theory. If you want to learn more, probably you can check out other references or other explanation. But the main point, sabi ko nga, we need to use not our conscious, our unconscious to become conscious. Okay, so that is the iceberg theory. And another theory that makes Sigmund Freud very popular during this time was the id, ego, and superego theory. So there is what we call an ego that is pertaining to the reality or what balances now the superego and then the id. We also have id, which is pertaining to the instincts, or if we use our instincts. And for superego, if we are using we are using and then maximizing or utilizing our morality. Okay, so this theory is also used by some of the movies or videos or cartoon or animated movies. Like for example, if they're going to decide, a character will going to decide, there is an option. The concept we're in our left shoulder, there is an evil, and which is pertaining to the id, that is more on instinct. And then on the right side of our shoulder, there is what we call a angel, wherein that is pertaining to the superego. So that is the good thing, or the good way of thinking of a person. So probably that is based dito sa concept ni Sigmund Freud, which is the id, ego, and superego. But that is more on exaggerated way to apply yung concept ni Sigmund Freud. Okay? So when we talk about ego, that is the balanced way of how we think or we perceive or how we behave. No, kaya reality. No, that is the reality. That is how we do things. Okay, that is our ego. And for id, probably that is the instincts. And for superego, that is the morality. That is either we know what is the good and we know what is the bad things. Okay, so this is also one of the reason why some people are saying that, oh, umiiral na naman yung pagka-ego mo. Umiiral na naman yung super-ego mo. Umiiral na naman yung id mo. Or you are actually using your id because of your instinct. You are using your ego because you are basically basing your thinking and behavior on the reality. Okay? Or you are using your super-ego because you know what you are actually doing. You know what is right. You know what is wrong. Okay? So that is why it is also important to talk about the id, ego, and super-ego of Sigmund Freud. Okay, so that is another theory that makes him popular or have an impact towards our society. So until now, we are still studying and learning about the id, ego, and superego. Okay, so the last person is considered to be the person of century, yan, because of his work, Albert Einstein. So until the early 21st century. So Albert Einstein is considered to be the person of century and also won the Nobel Prize. That is one of the considered to be the highest prize of a scientist because of his work and contribution, because of his 4 articles that been published, no, and also his work. So the annus mirabilis, the photoelectric effect, the Brownian motion, the special theory of relativity. Okay, so I will just focus one of his article, which is the special theory of relativity. So the application of this theory of relativity, if you observe, no, our modern time, our smartphone, your iPhone, your other gadgets or devices, we have what we call the GPS. No, yung tracking use doon sa ating Google Map, yun, that is the GPS. Because of the theory of relativity, we created the concept of GPS. Okay, so thank you so much for Albert Einstein on coming up with the concept of the special theory of relativity. We came up with the GPS during this modern time. Okay, so that is because of that study of Albert Einstein. Yan, another thing, when we talk about the tracking device in the airport, yan, the device that they are checking out when will the first airplane will going to have a higher altitude or lower altitude so that it will avoid yung crashing with the other airplane. That is again because of the theory of relativity or study of Albert Einstein. Okay, so there and other application actually of the theory of relativity in other work of Albert Einstein. So he is also the one who discovered and then presented the concept of speed of light, and also yung other concept of the creation of what we call the light, which is in the form of what we call yung photon na tinatawag natin. So we have the photoelectric effect that was been a study and work also of Albert Einstein. So that is another one thing, no? So when you talk about photon, yan, when you talk about lights, we're going to think about Albert Einstein as one who contributed on the idea or the concept of this creation of the electricity, as well as when you talk about lights. Alright, another thing, when you talk about Albert Einstein, he became also very popular during this time because of his creation of the very popular formula, which is the energy equivalence, which is the E is equal to mc squared. Well, my dear classmate, no, for the information of everyone, this is the time that he proposed now the speed of light. Now, because the E is the energy, the M is the mass, multiplied with the square of the speed of light. So he already proposed that there is what we call a speed of light, and because of this E is equal to mc squared, it is possible that if we humans or maybe an organism we're going to reach the speed of light, it is possible that it will release, it will produce a fire or a very high level of energy. So we can say that we are like like a super saiyan, no? In that animated cartoon, no? So meron tayong tinatawag na yung animation na yung Dragon Balls, okay, yung sina Goku, etc. That concept was actually coming from the energy equivalence, because it is possible that we can release a very high energy because of this formula produced or introduced by Albert Einstein. So if we reach the speed of light, yan, if we are very, very fast, and we also increase the energy of our body, probably it is possible that we will release also somewhat like we are burning. Okay? Same as true with the superhero flash, no, kung saan nanggaling yung concept ng superhero flash, not only on the lightning, yan, because it has a lightning speed, but also in the basing here in the E is equal to mc squared. Okay? So probably, my dear classmates, no, that is one, well, the Flash superhero is only a a fantasy, no? It's not actually true. But through simulation, that is quite possible. Okay? Doon, basing it doon sa energy equivalence of Albert Einstein. And this also explains that energy is neither created nor destroyed because energy is already been existed. So one of the supporting details or concept or explanation why energy is already existed because of the energy equivalence of Albert Einstein. Or he said that there is also another factor that we need to talk about energy. So energy is equal no doon sa mass multiplied by speed of light. So meaning meron existing na speed of light when we talk about the energy. Okay, so that is all about the E is equal to mc squared. He is also the first one who stated or said or discovered that the space and time is having actually a metric expanding, or in a simpler description, the universe is actually expanding, which is again proved by astronomers and then astronauts when they studied or they go outside already our planet, which is basically true. No, so until now, as time goes by, our universe is actually expanding. And again, the first one who said that one is Albert Einstein. And another thing, since we are talking about the universe, he is also the first one who proposed the concept or discovered what we call the black hole, or the concept or the idea of the black hole. And he said that a black hole is actually an empty space. No, so totally black yun, no, totally black yun. At the center of that encircled the black hole is it is actually an empty space. So the movies, the videos that we are watching, we're in the objects, or let's say the planets, are being sucked towards the center of the black hole is only an exaggeration. Exaggeration lang yon. In reality, when we talk about black hole, according to Albert Einstein, it is only an empty space. So empty lang yan, blank yan, no? There is no other specific objects, or let's say extraterrestrial planets, stars, etc. There's nothing, no, because it's empty space. And probably the black hole, he's also said, and also been proved by the other astronomers or astronauts during the 21st century, that the sides of the black hole is actually moving. Yan, it is turning, no? So in the sides of the black hole, as it turns, it's also distorting or distracting the positions, and also it's somewhat like sucking, no? It's somewhat like sucking or distracting the original form of the planets, the stars that is near the side of the black hole. So that is how it explains, no, yung ating black hole. It's only exaggeration, or there's an exaggeration in the different videos and then movies that we are actually watching. Okay, so please don't be confused. If you want to learn more about black hole, you can watch videos or authentic videos or reliable videos doon sa ating YouTube. So it explains yung different parts of the black hole. Only the sides are actually moving. So it seems like it is sucking. It is sucking the different objects or the planets or the stars, but probably it is only distracting or distorting. Yeah, distorting and then disturbing yung original form or yung original positions of the stars because they are near or close on the sides of our black hole. Okay, so that is all about the black hole of Albert Einstein, or explained by Albert Einstein. And then lastly, yung during the World War II, we have what we call the Manhattan Project, or that is what we call yung bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or yung Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That is what we call Manhattan Project. So during the World War II, US tend to let Japanese surrender, no, during that time. So they come up with what we call the Manhattan Project, and this time they invented and created what we call the atomic bomb, or what we call the nuclear bomb. Okay, and please, no, my dear classmate, please don't be confused. Some people are saying that Albert Einstein is the one who created or invented the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb because of also in the concept of the photoelectric effect. No? Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na fission of the atoms or photons and so on. So that can be used also in creating the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb. However, during this time, they invited actually Albert Einstein to be part of the Manhattan Project, but he never accepted the invitation. So he never been part on the creation or invention of the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb. So the original creator or inventor of what we call the nuclear bomb or atomic bomb was Robert Oppenheimer. Okay, so Robert Oppenheimer will be mentioned during the next chapter of our subject. So when we mention yan, we will talk about the other parts of our subject or chapter of our subject. So for now, we know that Robert Oppenheimer is the creator or inventor of the nuclear bomb. So probably that Manhattan Project turned out to have an impact also towards our society. And that is the start or the starting point or the point of view of our society that is very, very distrustful to create this kind of weapon during this time and even during this present time. Okay, that's why they banned the invention of nuclear weapons, okay, or nuclear bomb or atomic bomb. So imagine, no, pag meron tayong atomic bomb during this time, probably there is a very strong version of atomic bomb or nuclear bomb compared during the World War II. Okay, so that is all about the Manhattan Project when we connect the name of Albert Einstein. So again, he rejected the invitation of Manhattan Project. And that's it, my dear classmate. I'm going to end with Albert Einstein. If you still have any questions or clarifications, open naman yung ating group chat or yung ating Canvas.